ददातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वा पाणिपादं न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो न मे वैमदो नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न दीपं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे मृत्युशङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्मः न बन्धो न मित्रः गिरिनन्दिनि नन्दित मेधिनि विश्वविनोदिनि नन्दनुते गिरिवरविन्द्य शिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरधर्षिणि दुर्मुखमर्षिणि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि कीर्तिशमोषिणि घोषरते धनुजनिरोषिणि दितिसुतरोषिणि दुर्मदशोषिणि सिन्धुसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते ऐ जगदम्ब मदम्ब कदम्ब वनप्रियवासिनि घासरते शिखरि शिरोमणि तुङ्ग हिमालय शृङ्गनिजालय मध्यगते मधु मधुरे मधुकैतभगञ्जिनि तव बन्धि निरासरते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते शूण्डगजाधिपते रिपुगजगण्डविदारणचण्ड पराक्रम शुण्डमृगाधिपते निजभुजदण्ड निपातित खण्ड विपातित मुण्ड भटाधिपते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते दुर्मध शत्रुवधोदित दुर्धर निर्झर शक्तिभृते चतुर विचार धुरीन महाशिवदूत कृत प्रमथाधिपते धुरित धुरीह दुराशय दुर्मति दानवधूत कृतान्तमते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते शरणागत वैरिवधूवर वीरवराभयदायक रे त्रिभुवनमस्तक शूल विरोधि शिरोधि कृतामल शूल करे भूमि भूमि कामर धुन्धुभिनाद महोमुखरी कृत तिग्मकरे जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते कृतिमात्र निराकृत धूम्र विलोचन धूम्रशते समर विशोषित शोणित बीज समुद्भव शोणित बीजलते शिव शिव शुम्भ निशुम्भ महाहवतर्पित भूत पिशाचरते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते धनुरनुसङ्गर नक्षण सङ्ग परिस्फुरदङ्गनटकटके कनक विशङ्ग कृषट्क निशङ्गर सद्घट शृङ्ग हठावटुके कृत चतुरङ्ग बलक्षितिरङ्ग घटद् बहुरङ्ग रटद् बटुके जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय जप्य जये जय शब्द परस्तुति तत्पर विश्वनुते भण भण भिञ्जिनि विङ्कृत नूपुर सिञ्चित मोहित भूतपते नटित नटार्थ नटी नटनायक नाटित नाट्य सुभानरते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुमनस्सु मनस्सु मनस्सु मनोहर भ्रमर 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 भ्रमराधिपते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सहित महाहवमल्लमकल्लिक मल्लितरल्लक मल्लरते विरचित वल्लिक पल्लिक मल्लिक भिल्लिक भिल्लिक वर्गवृते सितकृत फुल्लसमुल्लसितारुण कल्लज पल्लव सल्ललिते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते अविरलगण्डगलन्मदमेधुरमत्तमतङ्गजराजपते त्रिभुवनभूषणभूतकलानिधिरूपकयोनिधिराजसुते अयि सुदती जनलालसमानसमोहनमन्मथराजसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते
A warm welcome and wishing the best of the day ahead to all delegates uniting with us today on this online platform for Week 13, Build Bharat, Safe and Secure India, a 25-week series which has commenced from 26th of July 2020, a purely knowledge-sharing webinar series successfully progressing each Sunday. We are overwhelmed for all the support, patience, and time for connecting with us today. We are sure you will find this worthy and are excited to attend the webinar. In case of any questions or query arising during the webinar, we request you to please type in using the Q&A section or raise hand. During the webinar, also keep an eye on the chat section for links on our previous sessions and to join our East Coast group community for case studies, pocket guides, advisories, newsletters on fire, safety, security. We have our group CEO, Mr. Hemant Kharsi, who will lead this session. We are also blessed with presence of a star speaker, Mr. Menakem Bachraj from Israel. Welcome, sir. Let us proceed the session with a small prayer.
असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Come on, chant this mantra. असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Very good morning. Happy Navratri to all the people, all the attendees here. Thank you so much for taking your precious time, busy schedule. Sunday and joining with us. Um, it's been 12 weeks already passed, and we are now entered into week 13 today. Uh, Let us do recap what we discussed till now, so that we know there is a continuity, and then maybe we can start our discussion today on security management. And I have my colleague, Mr. Lena from Israel, also with us today to share his views and experience on security risk assessment, the topic that is very, very important for all of us to understand fundamentally. If you look at the flow so far till week 12, we have covered um, first engineering and design fundamental, talking about a lot of codes and engineering practices, giving insight on those engineering practices, why it is important, what's the basis and fundamental. And then we enter into a fire protection strategy. Strategy is the one that is very, very important and the fundamental aspect of deciding for a way to go. Now, that's the reason we separated out these two strategies, because fire strategy is totally different strategy. It is resulting from something else. And security strategy, which we are going to discuss today onwards, is fundamentally totally diverse, and it becomes a base for your entire security management as such. Mostly people still in India and outside do not give much importance and weightage to developing the strategy, and that's how they spend more time during construction and maintenance period, because their approach is more on reactive rather than proactive. And this is a strategy mapping which uh, gives you a complete analysis at the beginning before any event happens, or understanding that adversities that can happen, and plan your facility in a way that you are prepared, at the same time you are preventing those undesired or unsafe acts or conditions that may have arise. So in fire protection, we in detail had uh, very good brainstorming session in understanding both the side of the coin. First is prevention strategy, where we expect to implement some of the strategies which is going to prevent that fire not to happen, or it may delay that action. So what are those prevention practices that are required for any facilities, whether it's a commercial, residential, hotel or hospital or any kind of a building? Every facility must focus on prevention practices. But then question comes in, if suppose we only invest on prevention and we expect that the no event can happen, then why do you still invest on protection, which is the other side of the coin? So we understood that there is nothing that a foolproof strategy can work, or there is nothing that a practice that you develop for a prevention can also 100% secure that nothing can go wrong, because we are living in the world of uncertainty. Risk is always around us. You cannot eliminate risk 100%. And that's how we started discussion and the strategy mapping, accepting the fact that risk will be always there and we have to live with the risk. Like exactly today, we are living in the risk of COVID, and it will continue. We don't know how long. But then, as long as we are able to prevent our body and our health, taking those precautionary measures, we still can continue what we are doing, right? And there are many people who are doing it. So, similar way in fire, there has to be a mixed approach. That means you still have to keep prevention strategy live, healthy, at the same time protection strategy also. So under protection strategy, we looked at again sub components which is defend in place and uh, move the hazard, where we looked at all the active component, at the same time passive component also, which are going to be part of your in defense strategy. So mostly people focus on active fire protection system, which is hydrant, sprinkler, fire alarm. But then
we miss out in terms of integrating those active systems and then even smoke management systems, and that's how we sometimes fail in getting those accidents prevented or fatalities protected. I didn't get enough time to get into the detailed discussions of active system as such, but I gave you overview in a short limited time that how your system have to be planned and how system have to be coordinated and engineered, because this system is purely an engineering. It's coming from science. It cannot be like you ask a plumber to lay the pipe and install the sprinklers and complete your sprinkler system, so as your fire alarm system, so as your hydrant system. It is completely engineering. We also looked at very detailed dedicated one session on smoke management, which is a very, very important aspect of the whole, both prevention and protection, and how it is important in restricting the smoke and heat coming in from one place to other area. Then, of course, there are pressurization techniques, there are positive pressurization, there are negative pressurization. So we looked at all the engineering aspects and side of how you can develop your smoke management strategy. And I have also given some food for thought, leaving some of the questions for you to answer and retrospect. What is your smoke management strategy right now at your facility when you are working at your place, which is maybe commercial, residential, industrial, hotel, whatever it may be? There must be a strategy in place wherein you are able to manage the smoke. And smoke management is nothing but a controlling the smoke, because you can't really expect smoke not to happen out of the combustion process. Smoke will be a natural property of a combustion process. But if it is so, how do you control, how do you restrict that flow so that it doesn't become a hurdle for your irrigation process? So whether it's a fire seal, whether it's a fire door, so all the passive management also is going to be talking to that. Apart from the passive management, the active system also is important, that you need to be coordinated along with the smoke management system. And this is again the uh, gray area, I would say, in India specifically, where people do not have bandwidth to coordinate internally and make that system as one unified system, so that smoke management is also talking to HVAC, smoke management is also talking to fire detection system, smoke management is also talking to the passive system that you have, and so on and so forth. So we looked at many aspects, having deep dive on these typical aspects, but I think there is one case that I wanted to highlight before I invite any questions. I think some people have raised hands, so I'll throw open. But I just remembered one case or case study that probably needs to be incorporated in your whole fire protection strategy. That when you engineer this system as a system, as standalone system, then how the gaps can happen. So this is what, the strategists need to be get involved in the design phase or planning phase that we are right now discussing since last 4 weeks or more than 4 weeks. Like for example, you have a fire detection alarm system protecting a multi-story building. We all know that there are certain detailed codes and standards that we discussed, NAPS 72 at global level, maybe IS 2189 at the local level. But then we all know that these codes will give you a design parameter, but when you implement those codes and standards on ground, still how the gaps can happen. So how this system have to be taken care into the nature of the building that you have, and specifically when I mention a multi-story building. We all know that fire detection alarm system is going to give you a kind of a specific warning, an indication into the fire alarm panel that this is a location that is actually reaching to a fire, and you need to rush and investigate for the fire warden to come and then for occupant to evacuate the building. But you cannot expect that this engineering can actually work on practically. Like we discussed at many places, the scenario specifically in fire alarm, because fire alarm, I'm going to give it first because that's a life safety system. And it is important that we need to understand the application very carefully. Now, when fire codes are actually required to have a manual call points or pull station that we talk, which is red in color, they are located on each floor at say egress path or at exit on the egress path. Now, you cannot have a reliance on such systems alone that it is sufficient. I've seen many facilities which are relying only on manual call points, less on detection, and that's how I wanted to bring this uh, point forward. Now, for example, if someone who detects the fire on a fourth floor facility and immediately runs down using the staircase on the way out of the building, and he comes to the main lobby at the final exit discharge, and he finds a pull station, and he recollects that okay, this is a pull station that I need to activate so that I can alert the people. So he activates that pull station on the ground floor lobby and he vacates. Now, what does fire alarm panel say about this fire? The fire alarm panel we could say that fire in lobby, isn't it? Because the manual call point that you have configured on the ground floor lobby is at taking the address as ground floor lobby. That might prompt a wrong response because manual pull station ensures that people have an opportunity to get a signal of that emergency and warn so that they can evacuate. But it does not ensure that the emergency area will be adequately identified because the guy who has actually activated that manual call point on the ground floor, the emergency is not on ground floor, it is on the fourth floor. So it does not ensure the emergency area. So the answer does not lie in eliminating or relocating that manual call point device, but in augmenting the system with a detection mechanism that probably will determine the exact location of the emergency, isn't it? So how you are going to facilitate and coordinate the entire system altogether? This is what the crux of the engineering when you talk about life safety system as such. And this doesn't come in the codes and standards. You might be very adequate and well conversant and you follow the existing, but these are the practical issues that you need to take into consideration and see that you have addressed that concern or issue in your whole application that you develop. Yeah. So let me get some questions in case you have any questions in understanding the fire strategy so far. Yes, Mr. Ravindra. Can you unmute? Mr. Ravindra Mori, can you unmute? Anyone has any question till now before we move on to the security strategy? Yeah. Any questions? Feel free to ask so that you don't carry misconceptions or any gray areas point, so that we can take the advantage of this forum in clarifying those um, elements. Any questions? No questions? Let's see in Q&A. Any questions? Okay, in Q&A there is no question. That's fine. Yeah, Mr. Singh.
Hello,
What do you have to say?
sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
अच्छा सर, मेरा एक प्रश्न ऐसा है कि अगर आग लग गई, कोई कहीं भी लोकेशन है, स्विच यार्ड है या आपका मल्टी स्टोरी बिल्डिंग है, तो उस समय किसका मैनेजमेंट का क्या रोल होना चाहिए? जो भी मैनेजमेंट है वहाँ का, उनका क्या रोल होना चाहिए इन दैट केस?
ओके, सिंह साहब, ये बहुत सही सवाल आपने पूछा है, बट इसका आंसर मैं शायद आपको नेक्स्ट सैटरडे, नॉट नेक्स्ट सैटरडे, लास्ट सैटरडे जो रहेगा 31 सितंबर, आप जरूर, हमारा एक वेबिनार है, आप
ओके।
अटेंड कीजिए, सेम टाइम 11:30। वो स्पेसिफिकली ऑन इमरजेंसी प्लान और मैनेजमेंट में है।
तारीख कौन सा बताया
इमरजेंसी
सर?
जब होती है
तारीख?
31 सितंबर, 31 अक्टूबर।
31। ओके सर, ओके ओके।
अभी आपको चैट ऑप्शन में लिंक मिल जाएगा, आप रजिस्टर कर दीजिए।
ओके सर।
सो वो टॉपिक सिर्फ हमारा ये सवाल के ऊपर है रहेगा कि इमरजेंसी जब होती है तो हाउ डू यू प्लान।
यस यस।
बिकॉज ये आपका क्वेश्चन है, ये आपको मैं एक आंसर से जवाब नहीं दे पाऊंगा कि ये रोज होना चाहिए, बिकॉज बेस्ड ऑन द फैसिलिटी, जब उसका ट्रिगरिंग पॉइंट क्या रहेगा, उसके हिसाब से उसका एसओपी या इमरजेंसी प्लान डेवलप किया जाता है, एंड
यस
दैट्स हाउ द इमरजेंसी मैनेजमेंट एक्चुअली कैन वर्क। तो
यस सर।
सेपरेट टॉपिक है इमरजेंसी मैनेजमेंट, एंड इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट।
यस सर।
उसीलिए हमने एक एक दिन चुना है कि वो दिन पूरा, मतलब 1.5 hour, 1 hour वी आर गोइंग टू स्पेंड ओनली ऑन दैट टॉपिक। So please do register on that 31st October emergency plan uh, webinar, and it's free, and it's you can always participate. So
ओके
thank you,
सर।
Mr. Singh.
ओके, थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू।
Mr. Suresh Yadav has raised the question how to facilitate the power plant control room to reduce fire risk. So again, it is part of engineering. It is part of a design whole um, effort, because when you look at the power plant control room, it needs to be evaluated whether how big it is, whether it is naturally ventilated or it is predominantly air conditioned, temperature control room. There are a lot of critical elements. There are control rooms which are manned. There are control rooms wherein you have a ceiling void area, false floor void area. So you need to see that you have a prevention practices wherein you are able to take care of all your cabling, your fire sealant, your fire doors, your ventilations, your emergency lighting. It's part of your prevention management. And then, of course, equally, weightage has to be given on protection, and not only manual, automatic, so that you don't lose any moment in case of any fire happens. Your suppression system can trigger and try to control the spread of the fire. So you need to play on both prevention and protection, and that's how the control room is been protected. So there are a lot of technology, there are a lot of systems, there are a lot of equipments available, but you need to see that this is all there. And of course, the last layer comes as a preparedness. The people involved in the control room must be prepared to handle such kind of emergency, because you may have a good prevention practices, you may have sufficient and adequate protection practices, but the people inside are not trained, not able to handle physically, mentally the emergencies, then again something can go wrong. So you need to balance all three P's that I have always mentioned about it. So that's the answer, quick answer I would say, Mr. Yadav, on protecting the control room. I hope I have answered it. Good. So I think good questions. So thank you so much. Let me just start this session wherein we are talking about, now we are entering into a very important phase, and the another side of the coin called security. I mean, so far we have spent enough time on understanding the safety aspect as such, but now we are getting into the mode of security. Now, when you understand security, some people will walk in, some people will walk out. Again, it's a mindset thinking that security is not my portfolio, or security is not my responsibility, or security is not my role. And that's how it could be applicable for the fire, those who are into security. So I wanted to clear that air first before we begin. Whatever discussion that we are having, or for the last 12 session and another 12 session that is going to happen this year, it's meant for everyone, be it technical, be it in specific domain, whatever role that you are doing in your organization. And specifically, when I mention organization, that is, we expect that the people who are working in the facility, which could be residential, commercial, or industrial, there is certain role to play, and everyone can contribute directly or indirectly. Like security, when we are talking about right now, security is a topic. Although you maybe you're not directly responsible in understanding the whole activity, but as long as you understand what security means to you, you can always support the security function or security department so that they can discharge the role effectively. Number one. Number two, in case in your routine job that you do, whether it's a production, whether it's a supervision, whether it's a leadership, whatever role that you have, if you identify any security gaps after you go through this webinar that we have, knowledge series that you gain, if you identify any gaps, you can always alert, discuss with the security officials or departments within your people, within your department, so that you can bridge that gap. But unless until you understand the fundamental, what is security, what is security risk assessment, which is going to be the topic of the discussion today, you'll not be able to cooperate with the department. At the same time, you'll not be able to understand why this has been taken place. Or if it is not happening, you can always question why security risk assessment cannot happen in my organization. So essentially, what I meant to say is that the topic is everyone's interest. Topic is the one that you can help your organization to support and make your department more healthy, more productive, more fruitful. Unless until you know the fundamentals, you'll not be able to contribute. So when you look at the safety as a verb or as an element, we all know that we are looking at what any any risk associated that could result out of unintentional activity. That means accidental. It could be human error, it could be lack of training, it could be anything as such. So any eventualities or any risk or any injury that can happen resulting out of the unintentional situation is something that we call as a safety. And security is exactly on opposite side. So there is similarity and there is a difference. There is a complement function, there is a conflict function also. So when you look at the security, it is purely intentional harm and predominantly coming from a human factor. Safety could be human plus machine, could be anything condition as such. But security predominantly, of course, it will come from natural hazard also, but predominantly when you look at the security as a security function, it is an intentional harm. And that's how you need to understand, because as a human being, your fundamental right is to protect your life, protect your property, protect your environment, correct? If that is my fundamental right, then if something goes wrong in the whole chain, I must be alert. I must be able to handle those situations. So this is the one that is a difference between safety and security. The second one that I can see is that they conflict. Like for an example, if you look at any building, any plant, safety always looks at that the door should be always open in case of evacuation, in case of emergency, because people should go out, save their life, so that the harm or inside any facility, any fire that can happen or any unsafe act that can happen, they should be able to save their life by evacuating the building on time. So it is always allowing to open door policy. Visa by security is totally opposite. They always look at the locking mechanism. Security is all about how you are going to ensure that every facility is locked so that any theft that can happen, which is intentional, which probably could come from a human factor, we should not allow him or her or that particular element out of the facility without investigation. So we should have mechanisms so that we can trap them. We can have a delay. At the same time, we can have a mechanism where you can get the time to inspect the theft that is getting happened there. So it is always a conflicting. Doors, when you have an access control system, it is always conflict with the safety. Safety is always allowed to go up. So there are many as such differences. There are many as such conflicts. But if you look at the main fundamental common objective of safety and security is to what? Save life and property. Very simple. So that's the common fundamental goal of both the activity, and that's how they complement each other. Now, when you look at the security as a topic here, more and more organizational leaders and boards of directors are asking question: Is my security adequate? They are asking this question to security department. Now, one can respond with another question: Which is adequate for what? So in our personal lives, if you want to know what is wrong with us, we will always visit a doctor to be checked out, and as a minimum, we have a periodic check or health check that we do uh, every year or every 6 months, depends on the profile of the person or age of the person or awareness of the person. Now, what could reaction be if without testing and any diagnosis whatsoever, if your doctor all of a sudden will say that okay, tomorrow you want to be prepared for a surgery because you have something serious, you would be really questioning why. I'm not having any kind of a disease, I don't have any pain, I don't have any complaints. How come I need to have a surgery tomorrow? So you would question why a conclusion is being drawn without an investigation, and it could be not wrong as well, right? Similar philosophy should be adapted or applied to your security program. Significant changes to your security element as such should not be implemented without proper analysis or without proper diagnosis, and that is called a risk assessment. The topic that we are going to discuss, and Mr. Ramena is here to elaborate this topic. Unless until you do the risk assessment, you will not know what the pain, what the disease is, and then accordingly you cannot take medicine or maybe surgery or whatever it is. So it's all related. And I always give that example so that you can understand very fundamentally clear. So there is always a threat, there is always uh, vulnerability, there is always risk that you always uh, uh, come across. Now, what do you mean by risk assessment before Mr. Mena takes over? I just give fundamentals so that you are actually mentally prepared in understanding that concept better, because this is little complex for all the new people, but for the people who are actually into this domain, that for them it's a day in day out. So for them it's not a new thing. But fundamentally, this topic is not something very common. That's why I am going to give you a very very clear picture and fundamental picture. So risk assessment that you do, it attends ultimately three questions: What can go wrong in my facility? What is the probability that can go wrong? And what are the consequences? So these are the predominantly three questions that you can identify out of any risk assessment and physical risk assessment. What can go wrong? What are the chances of that it can go wrong? And if at all it happens, what is the consequence? The answering these questions, it is actually the process of identifying, measuring, quantifying, and evaluating the risk. This is how we technically term called the risk assessment. Now there is a concept called risk management, very quickly I will I'll tell you about this. What is the relation between risk management and risk assessment? Right, it is basically a second side of the coin because it is coming from where? It is coming from risk assessment only. Risk assessment is nothing but a part of risk management. Now, what does it actually try to answer you in risk management? What can be done first? If I know out of risk assessment what can go wrong, then I will identify the answer in risk management. What can be done? Then the second one is what options are available for me based on my capacity, resources, and this and that. And what are their associated trade-offs in terms of cost, benefit, risk, how much I can invest and how much I can mitigate that risk. And then last and important, what are the impact of current management decisions on future options? If I implement those future options, what is the impact? What decisions I need to take on that? So basically, risk management is a systematic, statistically based, holistic approach, 360 view angle, and that employs a formal risk assessment and management address. So this is predominantly the concept of risk assessment and the risk management. Yeah. So let me just um invite Mr. Mena. Let me just first allow him to make him as the host so that he can share his screen. Mm, yeah, Mena, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you. Can you
Yes,
hear me?
very good. Yes, we can. Okay, can you see the screen, share screen on the below?
Yes, let me just uh, is this is the okay, because I would like to share mine because I made some small changes in the morning. So
Yeah,
once,
yeah, that's what I mean. I'm asking you to share your screen only. So there is
yeah,
a
okay. One
button called
sec,
share screen.
1 second. Um, nice. 1 second. Let me just. Okay. Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah, very good. You can put it on slideshow.
Okay.
Over
It
to
is.
you, Meena.
Should I start or
You can put it on slideshow.
I beg your pardon?
You can put it on slideshow, presenter
Okay.
mode. Yeah,
Can you see it?
yeah, we can see it, but just put it on slideshow. That is on the left. Yeah, yeah, that button, left bottom,
Um, one
left
second.
bottom. Yeah, click on that. Yeah, click on that. No, 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 left bottom. That you already looked at the icon there. Yes, click on that. Yes,
Okay.
fantastic. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So it is good morning here, and I believe it's um, good afternoon in your end. My name is Mena Bakrak, and I'm. I don't know if Hammond presented me, but I'm in this business of what they call today Homeland Security in the last 45 years, and actually working in India in the last 20 years. What I would like to discuss about very shortly about the security risk assessment, what, why, and how we are doing it. Um, so what we are doing, the concept that we are following, it's called the security rings. and I will explain it very briefly in a minute. But this is a concept of security that derived for many years of experience with all kind of terrorist activities worldwide, and especially abroad by a terrorist organization against all type of targets, either civilian, military, in the aviation field, hotel industries, um, sport venues, everything. So we came to the concept which we call uh, the security rings. And the security rings based upon uh, actually four main circles. And I will speak about each of them. The first one is intelligence. Let me say the intelligence is not the responsibility of, let's say, let's take, for example, owner or management of hotel or any kind of site. It is not their responsibility to bring the intelligence. Intelligence usually is a responsibility of the government or the local police or local authorities or governmental organization. They are the one that is supposed to supply us with more or less accurate intelligence. The second one, and I will go inside each of them in a minute. The second one is alerting. I would like to build a concept which will give me an alert if I sense there is something wrong here. The third one is deterring. If somebody cross the alerting zone and actually arrive to my hotel or to my site entrance, I would like to build some kind of a deterring concept. Then when he will see it, he will say to himself, okay, I'm not sure that I can conduct my act, and he will go away. This is the best solution for all of us. But if we fail to do it, and the activity already infiltrate this deterring zone, then we have to build a capability of responding in order to close these incidents as fast as we can without with the minimum damage and of course loss of lives. So the security rings, as I said, intelligence is the first ring, and this is usually detecting an hostile activity up front in advance and getting all the information from what we call human, which is the human being, SIGINT, which is all kind of electronical uh, equipment, open source. Open source could be rumors, could be newspaper, television, and of course, official agencies and surrounding. Surrounding is the neighborhood. Somebody will let you know, well, listen, I saw yesterday a car making patrol around your site. Do you know them? Pay attention, etc. So we offer, as I said, a concept which is a think tank, which means with all our experience, we can tell you what exactly you should do when when you have this kind of a situation. The next one is the alerting. And alerting, of course, and I will show you on the sketch that I will show you on example of hotel, is the alerting, which means detecting the opponent's activities at the external rings while he's planning a hostile action against the facilities. The third one, as I explained, is the deterring. And deterring is actually implementation of all kind of security activities, which mean procedure and technology. When somebody which going to cause us harm will see it, will say, as I said earlier, okay, guys, I'm not going to do it. And of course, the last one is responding. The security object is maintain a high level of awareness and control, which is most important. As I always say, that the biggest enemy of the security is not the terrorist, is the day-to-day routine. And this day-to-day routine, we have to be very careful and to be aware and under control most of the time, which is very, very difficult, as all of you knows. Now, if I will show you an example of this four rings, let's take as an hotel premises as an example. Intelligence, as I said, this is a responsibility mostly by the government or local authorities. The second one is alerting. Alerting is an external area outside of the hotel perimeter fence or wall or whatsoever. And in the alerting, we will have usually maybe a car patrol, a foot patrol, and of course, we'll have some technological equipment like CCTV, vibration sensor, or infrared sensor on the wall, but all of them has a common aim to alert if somebody is trying to penetrate to our site. Deterring is, of course, everything which is already more or less inside the site. And if I will take an example here, the entrance to the hotel area, I will have some kind of security agent. I will have a bollard here. In most cases, the bollard will be some very heavy plants. And I will have somebody here that watching this angle of area to observe any kind of activities which is abnormal. If I will go already to the hotel itself, I will have inside or in the entrance to the hotel, I will have all kind of, again, procedure, equipment, and technology. Metal detector gate, hand-wound magnetometer, X-ray machine, and of course, a security agent. So this is how this concept is in reality. And of course, you can you can take it to every site. Either it's a stadium, it's a factory, it's a headquarter of a big organization. The same concept will implement and will be able to protect it. So let's speak a couple of minutes about the risk assessment methodology. Now, what the bottom line here is to develop a security concept for the venue or to the site and recommending set of actions in order to minimize the risk. This is the main issue. I don't want to find any kind of hostile activities against my site. So I have to minimize the risks, and I will do it preferably by an integration of human resource solution, technological means, and a combination, of course, of both of them. Now, when we are talking about risk assessment, let me go a little bit about what is the definition of some words that maybe most of you heard, but it is not clear. As we are doing it almost scientific way, you must aware of some of the definition, and the first one is threat. So what is threat? So threat is can be varied from interruption of the power to the venue or the site, violent demonstration, riot, hooliganism outside the site, car bomb, suicide attack, hostage situation, uh, attack by light weapons from dominate building, by sniper or by anybody else. And the last one, which is very rare, but it's happened mainly in Japan, in Tokyo, spreading a chemical biological substance. So this is the first one. The second is what we call a scribed scenario. So what is a scribed scenario? This is the possible pattern of attack based on knowledge of opponent's capability, motivation, and modus operandi. Modus operandi is the way this terrorist organization or these people, these terrorists, are usually conducting their terror act. And how do we know it? Upon intelligence, as I explained earlier, and a lot of past events that we evaluate, and we found out what is a common element when these terrorists are going to conduct a terrorist act, what they are doing. Now you have to understand that if you are talking about a terrorist or terrorist organization, uh, like we have in India, it is not the one will wake up in the morning and will say, okay, today I'm going to attack the management building. It is not working like this. They have to do what we call gathering and collecting information for the attack. They will come and they will see how many guards you have, what kind, what kind of technology you are using, etc., etc. And only after that, they will prepare and going to conduct this terrorist attack. All of us remember the attack on the Taj Hotel in Mumbai. It took them about many months, although it was sponsored by the intelligence of Pakistan. It took them a couple of months to do all the preparation, to bring the munition, and to do all the activities to plan which one is going to attack which target, etc. So a scribed scenario, this is exactly what I wrote here. Threat assessment study. What is it? As I explained, it's establishing all the threat and main scribed scenario based on past occurrences, intelligence, and extrapolation. We take all the past experience and we study what is the modus operandi, how they are doing it, in what technologies they are using, what transportation they are using, etc., etc. So this is the threat assessment study. And the first one is, of course, the course of action, which means how they are executing an attack. Uh, and this is derived from the conclusion of relevant elements in the field. The course of action is the concept of operation for executing what seems to be an effective way or effect. Of course, this is course of action of the terrorist. It's not the course of action of the defender. And what we are, when we are talking about vulnerability, this is very important. Vulnerability, this is in any elements in the field, in the site, which creates a weakness and enables the opponents to execute is course of action. And this is very important because, as you will see in a minute, this is what we are looking for. This is how we will protect ourselves through the correct identifying the vulnerabilities. And what is the risk? The risk is a product which is the outcome of the combination of the course of action and the vulnerabilities. We usually describe it in a grid scale 1 to 5. Somebody will do it 0 to 10 and summarize the security status of the venue. I can give you an example. When I was invited by the Chinese government before the China Olympic Games, they built a new airport and they invited me to give them some consultation about how to protect the main hall in the airport, the departing hall. And just to tell you about different concept of thinking. So when I came with the security in charge, and we came to an empty, huge hall, and he asked me, okay, how do you protect it? And I asked him, what you afraid of? What is a vulnerability? What is the risk here? And he said, no, no, no. Tell me how many cameras you are going to install here. So I told him, listen, I can put here 2 cameras and I can put here 500 cameras, but it will be waste of money. We will have to match the solution from technology and procedure point of view to the risk in order to reduce the level of the risk and take off almost completely the vulnerability. Team reports, of course, is the final report that will be prepared by a team of security experts, and it will be including the threat, the described scenario, the threat assessment study findings, course of action, risk, and recommendation. I will give you a small example. Uh, let's say the venue, hotel, site. What is the threat? Suicide attack. There are many other, but this is only an example. The venue, a scenario is that he will come and exploding himself. Course of action, he will come by a metro or by a car to the site. Uh, and maybe will explode himself just in front of the X-ray or before the security check. The vulnerability, there is no screening after leaving the metro. So everybody can come freely with a lot of ammunition, explosion, and entering the site. The risk, we will identify the risk as very high. And recommendation will be, of course, to screen all the suspicious looking. We are not recommending all the time to screen everybody. It is not efficient, but we will build some what we call a suspicious sign, which will enable the security agent to be able to identify some suspicious looking people coming out of the metro and to take some specific measures to tackle them. When I'm talking about stages, let's say in a field, or this case, it's an example of when we did all the risk assessment for the Olympic Games in Athens in all 63 Olympic venues. So when we did it according to these stages. First of all, we gather all the information regarding the site. We observe, collect all the materials, interviewing, checklist, etc. And then define what is the course of action, what is the threat, what is the described scenario. and for periphery, identify vulnerabilities. I can give you an example. When I came to the main stadium, where the opening and final ceremony, I asked the chief of police, which was in charge of the security. I asked him. He showed me I think it was 70,000 seats in the stadium, and I asked him, okay, where is the president is going to sit? And he asked me why it's important to you. I told him I will show you. So he showed me in one of the upper row. I went over there and I asked him to join me. And when I arrived there, I look around and I noticed that in a distance to my judgment, it was more or less 1,000 meters, there was a hill which was observing these seats and part of the stadium. So I told him, I recommend to you that during those two occasions, there will be a police patrol car which will block the entrance to this hill. And he asked me why, it's far away. I said, yes, but today's with sniper rifles, it can reach 1,200 meters easily. So if you would like to reduce this vulnerability and the course of action of somebody that will try to kill with the sniper, this is the way to do it. So this is a very small example. And of course, determine the character and level, defining the risk as I just explained to you. The stage five, it's optional in most cases, which mean blue team and red team. What is mean that in some project, the client is ask us, okay, now I am not satisfied unless uh, you will create a red team. What is a red team? Red team is like a terrorist group. It's of course our consultant, which has a lot of knowledge, and they will study and learn the site, all the security elements, all the procedures, and they will try to find the weak point and to penetrate it. Blue team, of course, it will be our security forces, what they are doing in this case, how they can tackle this future attack, etc., etc. The sixth stage, of course, is the complete screening and of course preparing the report of the risk assessment methodology, which will include all the elements that I explained. So just to finalize my short explanation, it is very important before you're entering, and I face it many times when a client approaches us and asks us, what kind of technology should I put in my site in order to protect it? My answer will always be, first of all, I must understand what is the risk, what is your vulnerabilities in this site, and then I can come with a solution. Because in some cases, the solution will be, instead of spending huge money on, let's say, very sophisticated camera with video analytic system, the most simple solution will be to change the door and lock it. And this will be solving the problem without any investment. So you have to look at the situation from the eyes of, as I said always, of the terrorist. And since we have a lot of experience fighting the terrorist and studying the way of operation, uh, this is the best way to do it. So thank you very much. And if there is any question, I will be glad to answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Hina. It was wonderful. Any questions, guys?
यस सर, मेरी आवाज़ जा रही है?
यस, बोलिए ना।
अच्छा, मेरा क्वेश्चन है, व्हाट वेंट रॉन्ग इन द केस ऑफ मुंबई अटैक?
It's a different case study altogether. Mr. Mena is asking the question, what went wrong in Mumbai attack? So, I mean, it is very difficult to answer.
Well, since when it happened, I lived in Delhi, and I'm not involved in this, but I can tell you that there are so many mistakes. First one, of course, is the intelligence.
Yes.
Uh, we in India, we didn't get any advanced intelligence about what is going to happen. And as I explained, this terrorist act was planned months on months before. So the fact that we didn't have any kind of information in advance was the first problem. By the way, is the same as the 9/11 in the US. And the same as was a couple of years ago in Brussels, in Belgium. I was invited by the government to evaluate the situation, and I discovered, first of all, that you believe it or not, they had more than 100 intelligence organization within the small Belgium, and none of them were speak with the other. So, and the most amazing issue, and I believe it will give you an answer on the intelligence part of it, that when they had the explosion in the airport, they sent an email to the underground to close the underground. Of course, the manager of the underground station didn't see the email, and 15 minutes later, there was an explosion in the underground. So, first of all, there was no intelligence. Second one, the recruiting the special forces in their base and to bring them to Mumbai, if I'm not mistaken and remember correctly, it took almost 2 to 3 days, which is a lot of time. You remember in my presentation the responding. You cannot have 3 days terrorists uh, in your site doing whatever they want, and you will start acting only 3 4 days ago. I don't want to criticize the way of doing the operation by the military forces, uh, but these two that I explain is just enough to explain why this huge tragedy happens.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mena. It was wonderful. But I still perceive, I mean, I don't know whether you can throw a light on this question. Maybe since there are no hands, let me ask this question on behalf of audience. People in India specifically, they still have apathy about doing risk assessment as the part of the security management strategy. Most of the people consider that risk assessment is only applicable to the top niche or multinational companies or large corporates or conglomerate. However, it is not the case. So, uh, yeah, let me unmute Mr. Pandey.
Think there
Yeah,
is another question?
yeah, there is another question, so I'm just unmuting him. Yeah, Mr. Pandey. Yeah,
Hello.
yes. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I'm not Mr. Pandey, but my name is Bishwas. Is it the question unmuting is for me?
Yeah, yeah. You only raised the hand, and your name is Krishnaman Pandey, Mr. Vishwa. Sorry, I just
Okay. No problem.
look
No
at
problem.
what the name has been here, showing here. So,
Mena, my question is very simple. When we have a single person attacking out of anything, say a person is beheading somebody or slashing somebody or shooting somebody in the road or in a premises, what type of vulnerability or precaution a person should take when he is vulnerable?
Hammond, can you repeat, please?
I will repeat once more. There is a lone wolf attack. That means a single person takes a decision, maybe supported by some people, attacks people on the road or in a premises. So, what type of vulnerabilities or risk assessment a person can do who could be part of the victim group?
Okay. So first of all, I am going for the initial elements of the security concept or the risk assessment concept.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about people walking in the road or somebody in a premises, it's a completely different issue because when I will treat it's separate. If you're going in the road, I will evaluate what is the chances that somebody will attack somebody in the road. Why in this specific road? Is there something special about this road? Is it like, for instance, in front of very important a temple, or why somebody will do it? Now, after I will evaluate why this road is vulnerable and the people which are walking over there, and the same apply to a premises, I will find what type of risk, and part of it will be, of course, that somebody will attack me personally. And then I will find the solution either, and I can say that almost each time the solution will be a combination of procedures and technology. And if we are talking about road, I will have some kind of CCTV system which control the designated area. I will have some personnel which are looking at this location, etc., etc. So again, ask yourself each time not what is happening when somebody is attacking me on the road. Ask yourself why in this specific road, why I'm the one that was attacked. Of course, I can check when I'm talking about vulnerability, it's not only on site, it's on people as well. Maybe you are a VIP, maybe you are owner of a company, etc., etc. And this will lead me to the correct assessment, and from the correct assessment to the preferred solutions.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you, Mr. Boss. Sorry, your name is Mr. Pandey, so I took
Okay.
Mr. Pandey. Oh,
No
thank you.
problem. No problem.
Yeah. So good. So you can stop sharing. You can just click on
Okay,
stop sharing on the top.
thank you
It
very
was
much.
really good. It was really good. Thank you so much for your
My
valuable
pleasure.
insight.
My pleasure.
In fact, working with Mena is really fun. He's very, very technical and hardcore security specialist. So we have been working since more than 8 years, and it's phenomenal knowledge that we get whenever we have a dialogue with him. So it's all about experience. It's all experience matters, nothing else. And it's not just one country or multiple countries. Every week, almost, he is in different country. So that really makes him, a part, a specialist. Good. So thank you so much. Uh, Let me just go back to the screen and probably recap what we discussed. It's nothing but, I mean, we use this terminology from the Mr. Mina's presentation about all these three terms: risk, vulnerability, threat. But if you look at graphically,
The risk is actually the midpoint of threat, asset, and vulnerability. And that's what most of the corporate in the world that you see that they use this word for carrying out specific studies. Let me just run a poll, quick poll to understand uh, what is the assessment or what is the input or view of the people. So the first question I want to throw here is, based on your understanding, what is the greatest ongoing threat to business? Is it an external threat? Is it an internal threat? Or is it outsider in collision with the insider, which is threat? So you can just click on any one button which you think is the greatest based on today's scenario globally. It's not just considered on one continent. Globally, where you see the trend happening, which is going towards. Yeah. So I can just wait for 5 seconds, then we can move to next one. Okay, good. There's one. Okay, thank you. So let me result, or maybe I will share the result here. Here, probably most of the people consider outside in collision with insider. So I don't know about why it is coming up in which mind, but technically, what has been analyzed globally in research, in internal threat is the most common, and that's the one which is most critical for any kind of a business. Neither external threat nor insider, not insiders coming in from outside. So this is just a piece of knowledge. Let me just ask another question. Um, we can play in between. So the second question I'm asking here is the process of determining the probability and cost of potential loss is known as. This is something technical, but you can always stretch your mind, apply common sense, and based on whatever understanding that you had in last 1 hour, you can just figure it out which is the correct answer. The process of determining the probability and cost of potential loss is known as probability analysis, risk assessment, or potential loss analysis, or physical survey. 5 seconds more. You can quickly think and click on one button which you think is right. Come on, guys, quickly. Still, people are thinking. Just wherever you think is a common sense, you can apply. Okay, done. Okay, thank you. So here is the poll result. 78% people felt is a risk assessment, and answer is correct. This methodology is called a risk assessment, and we'll discuss in few minutes how it differs from the rest of the studies. But then typically when you are identifying any analysis which is focusing on probability and impact, then probably it's a risk assessment. Yeah, thank you so much. We have a last question. Uh, this is little lengthy, but you can read. A critical on-site examination analysis of an industrial plant or a business or a home or a public or a private institution to ascertain the present security status, what is present, and to identify deficiencies or excesses to determine the protection needed to make a recommendation. So these are the three outcomes that we are expecting out of the examination, and this study is called security survey or a risk analysis or a full field inspection or a crime prevention assessment. So this looks very similar And that's what in industry uses this terminology very, very often, but we are not clear about the each meaning and how do you relate to our business. Yeah. So when you are conducting examination and analysis of an industrial place or any place that you have, which is for a security, current security status, identify deficiency, and determine protection needed. What do you call that exercise as? Will you call as a risk analysis? Will you call it a security survey or a inspection or a crime prevention assessment? Something really confusing term. Yeah, that's when people are taking time. So another 5 7 seconds more. I can wait. Click where everything is right. Then we can end the poll. Done. Many people are actually hesitant in writing the correct answer because they are not clear. Just use common sense and apply it. No negative marking. Okay, good. So here you go. I will end the poll here. And the answer here is security survey, which is perfectly correct. Yeah. So it is not a risk analysis. This is not an inspection and it's neither a crime prevention assessment. So it's purely a security survey when you are doing this. So there is a difference between survey and analysis. Analysis and assessment. So everything has different objectives and everything is totally focused on specific objectives. So thank you so much. It was good poll. Uh, so that's how we can actually understand this topic technically better. Doesn't matter we need to be technical, but at least fundamentally we should be clear. Because if somebody asks you as a part of security survey, I'm asking this question, then immediately you should be able to know, okay, what is the security service all about? Okay, so you can answer relevant and cooperate your management well. So that's how it is. So thank you so much. So I think when you look at this three terminology, I'll just quickly wrap up in next 10 minutes time. Um, the terminology that we have been using often in the industry, in a corporate industry, specifically in a large conglomerate, threat, asset, vulnerability, risk always lies there. And risk, mathematically, when we look at the fire strategy, we also evaluated the definition, mathematical definition of risk. And I don't know whether you remember, we mentioned that risk is nothing but the probability and the impact. How frequently it is going to happen and how much consequences it will give you. And that is going to give you a risk matrix or risk index. But in security perspective, when you look at in a holistic way and looking at your threat and vulnerability for the asset that you always have certain risk, and that is what the midpoint. And mathematically, if you look at it, this is the combination of threat plus consequences plus vulnerability. And that's how it becomes one as risk. And when you look at your risk, and that too specifically physical security as such, you have to understand in a holistic way. And then only it becomes one full exercise as a risk assessment. Otherwise, it becomes piecemeal. So let's look at it this in a more holistic way, or how actually in industry people are using this indexing for their businesses. There are many industries who are not doing the complete risk assessment, but they are doing what? They are doing a very partial assessment or exercise, which is they call as a vulnerability assessment. There are many organizations. They are not that critically important in terms of um, other risk parameters. They are only interested about vulnerability. So vulnerability, when you look at vulnerability study as such, it is going to take care of only as the consequences and vulnerability index out of the risk matrix. It is not going to take threat parameter in your study, in your assessment as such. So it is important when you use this term, or maybe when consultant try to use this term, okay, we are going to give vulnerability, then it is important that you know that threat are not part of their examination. So vulnerability assessment will consider only two out of three components. A threat level will be assumed to be at highest level, or at the organization will be forced to simply improve their security effectiveness, but they are focusing only reducing vulnerability and find the ways and means to reduce consequences. So that's how it becomes their effective function of the assessment as such. So when you look at this holistic way, maybe there is certain function in your organization where vulnerability assessment is very important. Maybe threat doesn't exist there, or threat may not be that important. But there are organization where they need to determine the threat level using the risk formula, and then how you are going to use it. Like suppose you have a hospital where doctors are being attacked by patient relative. And it had happened in India specifically that doctors were attacked and they were like fatalities accidents. So have you perceived that threat level? 2 days before, there was a big manufacturing company, and fortunately there the plant of us, where CEO was stabbed by one of the uh, disgruntled employee, NIP employee, which was working with them for more than 15 years, but they could never assess that as a as a threat in their whole risk assessment, or maybe they have never done the risk assessment in a level where they can identify this mindset, and accordingly their mitigation plan was in place. There are many schools that we have in India where principals was attacked by the student. Even within students were attacked by schools. So how do you perceive this risk? How do you perceive your threat level? And that is what your risk assessment comes in play. So threat assessment, when you look at it as a piece of entire risk assessment, then it is going to take care of your threat only, but it doesn't take care of vulnerability as such. So it is important that you need to look at it in pieces. What is the exercise that you are trying to implement, and what is the objective that you are going to get out of those different exercises? Maybe there are organizations where you need to do vulnerability study. Maybe there are organizations where you need to do a threat assessment, and maybe there are organizations at a level where they need to do risk assessment. But you need to see that how it is going to be effectively evaluated and been used for mitigating your risk. Because ultimately, risk assessment, what you call, has got three benefits. I mean, it is basically trying to prevent an attack by detecting it before it actually happens, or you are able to protect that attack, or thirdly, maybe you are reducing the impact or consequence of that attack so that it doesn't have a fatality or any kind of a major loss of life or property assets. So ultimately, this is what the benefit that you are trying to get out of the whole risk assessment as such: preventing, protecting, and reducing the consequences, or mitigating the plan. Any questions so far? Anything quickly before we wrap up? Any questions on specific term or topic? Mr. Narayan Reddy, the presentation and discussion was about external risks. However, what we have to do for safety of our property. Yeah, no, it is not only about external risk, Mr. Reddy. It is going to take care of. That's what I mentioned here. Vulnerability risk. You need to see that risk can be from internal, from external. Yeah. So you need to take into both into consideration. That's how your risk matrix is going to be developed. And as far as property is concerned, yes, I mean, you need to take care of as I mentioned in the beginning only, your security objective is protecting life and property. So when you have that 360 view objective, then only you are able to do a security function role well, or it is more effective, or it is more efficient. But if you only take care of only human factor, and that too only external, then that is not it. That's why my survey was specifically that internal theft is highly and highly vital, and it is important that you need to evaluate it as a whole risk assessment as such. So I hope I have answered, Mr. Reddy. Um, Good. So there are no questions. So let's wrap up here. When you look at the risk management as such, which is coming from a risk assessment perspective, essentially we are trying to do three things. One is identifying what is the hazard or risk involved in terms of your security aspect. Then it could be internal, external, it could be mix of internal, external. So whatever it could be. So you need to identify that first as a first step. And then once you do that identification, then you need to do a holistic way of assessing the entire risk in terms of what is the frequency, what is the impact, and what is the mitigation plan that we have. And that's how it gets completely managed in a bundle, and it is all dependent to each other. So when you identify the risk, when you know how to assess, when you know how frequently it can happen, and what is the impact of it, what is the consequences of that risk that can happen to you or your facility, and then are you prepared for it? What is a gap? How do you prepare yourself to mitigate that risk so that the impact will be less or maybe frequency will be less? So this is how the entire gimmick of your risk management and specifically the security management as such. And once you have this approach, a very structured and systematic approach to identify, to assess, and come up with a mitigation plan, then definitely you will have the resources needed. Then you will be able to maintain that resources in a trained and a qualified way, and that's how your process is going to be a very very effective and efficient. Uh, Let me just lastly give you a very quick snapshot, because now since we have also learned safety and we also know that safety and security complements, how do you develop strategy and what are those five ingredients that you need to take into consideration to develop your safety and security strategy as a cohesive strategy? I mean, when I give the examples of the CEO being stabbed, or maybe principal or student, or maybe doctor at many places, or even at that employees can have a lot of internal risk and external risk both. So it is important that the strategy what you develop, it is not in isolation. You need to take care both the elements put together, safety and security both. So the first and foremost step that is important for a strategy mapping is that you have to assess the vulnerability. What are the adversities that can happen to your place? How severe it could be or how minor it could be. You need to do a very, very methodical way of identifying those vulnerability in your place that exist. Unless until you get into the level of understanding, you'll not be able to develop any strategy further in terms of security and safety. So first and prime important is your assessing vulnerability. Unless until you know very clearly by using the methods of systematic way of identifying it, you'll not be able to develop any fruitful strategy out of it. And then once you know what are vulnerability, then you need to see that what are the safety measures that you need to apply on. What are the applicable safety measures that I can add on, put together as a strategy whole mapping, so that it can be a methodical way of managing those vulnerability. And then third and most important element is also the access control. I mean, access control, although it looks as a part of security, but it is part of safety also. When you have a very prudent way of access control, it's not just meant for allowing or rejecting entries, it is you are allowing the person with what, whether the person is entering with the guns, knife, or anything. Are you allowing that or not? What are your ways to control those accesses of undesired people? Those people who are actually in a mood which is in a attack mode, or which is not going to be uh, uh, healthy in your facility. How your evacuation management has been done? If any theft happens, is the person is going to evacuate as a part of whole crowd, or you are able to trap as a part of the process so that it doesn't go out. So it's really complex to engineer, but defining the access control mechanism, taking care of safety and security is very important strategy. And the fourth element goes as a alert communication. Like Mr. Mena also mentioned that, alerting when the terror attack happens, how soon are you able to get your forces on time? Is the communication gap happening there? And that's what he mentioned that in world, I mean, in 9/11 attack also, or Mumbai attack also, this is what the gap was. And it predominantly it is very common, because if your communication system is not strong, your mechanism is not strong, your your people are not aware in terms of alerting people and right people at right time, then your response or your response action will be very limited, or it will be delayed, and the consequences will be very severe. So it is important that as a part of strategy, you need to focus what is my alerting mechanism. Are the people responsible, accountable, authorized? What are those resources? Are they trained? What is the technology? Are they using it? Is there any dependencies in between? Is there any approval issues, internal, external? So this is what mechanism you need to develop and see that you are able to respond to a situation, and especially emergency situation, very quickly without losing any time. And then last and important, which is again a missing element here in the whole process, is revisiting your system. And how will you revisit? Not by only internal inspection, it is by audit. And there is a difference between inspection and audit. Audit is something that you need to do internally. Audit is something that you need to do externally also. And there is always value when you deploy people from outside, because that person who is coming in as a specialist doesn't know your people, doesn't know your organization well. So you can identify your gaps quickly. So audit is the one that can be done frequently, because even strategy also is not something static. Strategy also keep changing. Like today, if you develop a strategy for a space, specifically a manufacturing company that you have, say 5,000 people, not necessarily the strategy is going to be valid for 2 years. Maybe after 1 year, you need to revisit, because there are a lot of process change, there are a lot of people have changed, there are a lot of mindset change, there are a lot of technology changing. So you need to revisit constantly, and that's how it will come from the audit process. So as an organization, people have to invest on getting that audit done, so that you know what are the gaps that are required, and how we can mitigate those gaps sooner or later. So if you look at it, this is a very basic fundamental, but applicable to safety and security. And if you have this security strategy developed, then probably you can make a very prudent strategy. So time is up. I will not take much, but maybe I just ask these questions for your homework. Go back to your organization and ask what I need to prepare for. Maybe you need to define your goals, that I need to make this place a secure place so that a theft cannot happen. Anything for such. So you need to decide what is my goal that I need to have as an organization level, and do I prepare for it? What are my current capabilities? If I know that this is my goal, am I able to execute that goal with my current resources and capabilities? And then last and important is your what level of capability do you need to prepare? So what actions I need to do, what capacity building that I need to have, or capability building that I need to have to achieve that goal that I need to be prepared for. So these are very awakening questions. But if you start asking these questions, you will still start thinking that, okay, maybe there is a vulnerability, maybe there is a risk, maybe that is asset that I have already identified but not taken into consideration, or maybe this is a gap. So many things can pop up in your mind the moment you start asking this question to yourself as an organization level. So have these questions live. Maybe next week when we meet up, we can get your views on those questions in case. Uh, let's conclude unless until there are no questions. Yeah, there are questions from Yadav. Let me just quickly read. Is it good solution to install command control room? Oh, very good question. So wait for next week. We are going to cover this particular topic, command control center. Good that you talk about it. I forgot to mention that next week we are going to also discuss about command control room, not only for fire but for security also. Another question, Mr. Reddy, animals and reptiles, snakes and monkeys, dogs, etc. on the property, who has to handle security or HR? That's purely your prerogative. There are many organizations that I have visited where fire is handling all these things. There are many organizations where security is handling. So it all depends on your capability that you have, your organization structure that you have. It is nothing that a rule can be set to do this auxiliary function or ancillary functions. Yeah. So like in India specifically, fire authority people are also responsible for protecting birds. I don't know whether you know this. Yeah. So fire officers with their apron and this thing, they are protecting a bird. Because ultimately, if you look at it, what is the spirit of this security and safety? It is protecting life and property. That's all. So anything that is going to hamper your life and property, they need to be involved. So you need to decide. Of course, I won't expect HR or admin people to handle this kind of, because this is a field activity. Ideally, either it has to be fire or security people. They have been doing it, who are part of your entire security chain as such. So good question, Mr. Reddy and Yadav. Thank you so much. So time is up. I think we have taken 9-10 minutes more. Let's conclude with our national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It has been wonderful being with you. So see you on next Sunday, 11:30. We are going to continue our discussion on security. Also, we are going to discuss on specifically fire command control center. So please ensure that you come with your team, colleagues, friends in our community. Stay in touch with our Telegram group channel and stay updated. Thank you so much for again time and spending time with us. Thank you.